Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at how to embed quotes from a text effectively into your sentences when you're writing a text response essay. So what does it mean when a teacher says you need to embed quotes into your sentences? What does that phrase actually mean? Well, firstly, it means including quotes within the normal flow of your sentences. One of the assessment criterion is to write fluently, and that's what embedding quotes does. Secondly, the advantage of embedding quotes is that you are using the language of the text itself to express your ideas. We'll see examples of this later on. So how can you do it? There are 3 ways that are most effective. Firstly, you can use commas. Here's an example. Macbeth tells us, comma, Macbeth doth murder sleep, comma, which suggests that, and then you interpret the meaning or the intention of that line. A second option is that you can use colons. For example, Macbeth foretells his nightmares, colon, Macbeth shall murder sleep. Thirdly, quotes can just be a part of your sentence without necessarily using specific punctuation, and we'll look at some examples to see how you can do that. So here we have an example of where a quote hasn't been embedded into the sentence. The quote is just on its own, unsex me here, and then there's the interpretation in a second sentence. Lady Macbeth said this as she wanted to become strong yet also deceptive. So this is our starting point. How do we improve it? Okay, so our first option is using commas. And here we are. When Lady Macbeth cries out, comma, unsex me here, comma, she wants to become strong yet also deceptive. The use of the word when at the start of the sentence is particularly effective. Okay, so the next one uses colons. She reveals her deceptive nature in her soliloquy, colon, unsex me here. The third option just includes the quote within the fluency of the sentence naturally. Lady Macbeth's cry, unsex me here, suggests her strength and her deception. Okay, so now I want you to try. Here's a quote and here's an interpretive sentence afterwards. So the quote is, we shall make our griefs and clamour roar upon his death. Lady Macbeth's deception aims to hide her evil actions. Pause the video here and try to embed that quote into that sentence using 1, 2, or 3 of the options that were outlined in the previous slides. All right, let's look at some examples that students have used in their own work. So a quote can be used in the place of your own ideas. Here's an example. During a soliloquy, Macbeth speaks of Duncan's great leadership and how people will be enclosed with sorrow upon his death. This is an example of using the text to convey your thinking as much as possible. The quote here actually describes what the student interpreting the play wants to convey about Macbeth's feelings. Another way that you can incorporate quotes is to analyse the character. The protagonist is often addressed as brave Macbeth and is told by Duncan that he is a peerless kinsman. The titles Macbeth is given and the admiration he receives result in his want for more power. Can you see that it's much better if you can use 2 quotes, because really the more the merrier, and it really builds on a stronger argument, plus it shows a better familiarity with the text. So after you've embedded a quote into a sentence, and here's one that has 2 quotes, then your next sentence can be a comment on what this quote suggests about the character. What do these quotes reveal to us? All right, here's another example. Macbeth comments that, oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, which shows that he is sceptical about the things that he hears from the witches and senses that they are evil. Have a look here. Commas are used effectively to embed the quote into the sentence. Also, the use of the words which shows that's a nice little phrase that joins the quote to the interpretation. Here's an example of a quote coming at the end of a sentence. Macbeth becomes corrupted by the concept of being in a position of authority, and he blames his ambition for his motives when he states, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on another. So the analysis comes first in this sentence, followed by the evidence, and you can see the use of the little phrase here, when he states, as a joining phrase, as a conjunctive phrase between the interpretation and the evidence. Now here's something that is a really good idea to try and do. Use language, use an adjective that suits the mood of the quote. And here's the quote. After Macbeth kills Duncan, he feels such guilt and regret that he wonders, will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? The word wonders really encapsulates Macbeth's questioning and fearful tone at this stage. It's fantastic if you can try and do this. Here's another sentence that uses two quotes in a slightly different way. Let's have a look at how it operates here. When Lady Macbeth challenges her husband's manliness by asking him, Art thou afeard to be the same in thine own act and valour as thou art in desire? Instead of showing conviction and standing up for what he believes is right, Macbeth allows himself to be persuaded by her and makes a weak attempt to defend his courage when he says, I dare do all that may become a man. So here, two quotes are being used to show the reaction by one character to something another character said. It's fantastic if you can use quotes paired together as a point of comparison or contrast between characters. Have a look at all the commas in this sentence too. Here and here, so either side of that first quote. And then in the second quote, we have the little conjunctive phrase when he says, and another little comma here before the introduction of the final quote. Puts it together really fluently. All right, now this next example is really a step up, and it's commenting on how the language operates in a quote. He states that Macbeth shall sleep no more, which is interesting because he is talking about himself in the third person, further showing how he is so regretful because he wishes he was someone else. So, to really step up and add complexity to your work, you can comment on the language that is used by the author. And here, the student has said, using the third person, because he doesn't say, I shall sleep no more. Macbeth says, Macbeth shall sleep no more. And then the interpretation still, what does this reveal about the character? Can you see that it's the same question that we're always asking and seeking an answer to? What does this reveal about the character? All right, so let's review what we've covered so far. Firstly, you can use a variety of punctuation and sentence structures to embed quotes. And I think in our examples, commas was the most frequent one. Secondly, the quote should be in the middle or at the end of your sentence. That's a really good sort of marker for you. Write the interpretation first and then include the quote. Thirdly, try to use an adjective to capture the mood of the person speaking the quote. That really adds a nice layer, another layer of sophistication to your analysis. And lastly, using two quotes in one sentence shows much more complexity in your writing, and that's something that you really want to aim towards. So I hope you found this useful today, and hopefully you can go back and review it again before your next text response essay.